the rotating list. Hi, I'm Kevin Dockery. I'm the leader of the band. I actually gave a docent yesterday on polearms, and I covered spears pretty heavily. I'm quite willing to talk to you about them because there's somebody here who really wants questions answered. But like I said, I covered them yesterday. Would you prefer like swords?
Yes.
My Japanese swords? I do a really good Japanese swords.
I was stealing one of your best lines, actually.
I have friends. I have friends with guns. No, it's I just.
Now you're going to do all the clever things I was showing off to my friends.
That's quite out. No, I do not. Okay, I just got done with an expert who took it very offensively that I was explaining. Okay, you haven't quite got the story of the STG-44, which just showed up. It's the first assault rifle. I'm incredibly proud of having it here. And he's like explaining, and he's wrong. And this woman asked a question. I don't know if it's his girlfriend. I don't think so. And it was like, okay, you haven't quite got that right. It's a complicated history. But I wrote it in Future Weapons, you know. And the guy who wrote the best reference book on it is a friend of mine, William Senich. It's a small community. It's very, we know each other. And I'm like, fine, you tell her. And he walks away. And I was like, okay. It doesn't happen very often. We really try to be polite. The red shirts are here to answer your questions. If we do not have the answer, they will find somebody who does have the answer, which usually means they chase me down. But I'm not the only one. So, what I want you all to do is turn 90 degrees this way. Because I waited till he sat down.
This is the musical chairs.
I know.
Rotate.
Well, originally there were not going to be chairs in here.
Oops, sorry.
We did it for our sponsor, Lansky, who has been loyal to us, and we respect loyalty like only they will in the military. So we decided, okay, we'll put some chairs in here, and then it turned into this musical chairs thing for the docents. The docents are a museum term. It is an explanation, it's a tour of a museum from one of the curators. I'm not a curator. Well, I was an assistant curator for the Seal Museum in the 90s. But we put together this displays, plural, to educate and entertain. And the docents tend to be entertaining. Or at least I try it. Depends how flipping exhausted I am at the end of the day. I can get quite funny. Yesterday at the 10 p.m. Write the fight scenes. Fight, write, whatever they call it. Okay. Some of these are really flexible and I can't do this. I'm sitting next to John Ringo. Well, John and Ringo and I do a road show. Yeah, we bump heads and it's kind of fun. And the audience doesn't know what the hell's going on. They think we're going to kill each other. It's like, we're respectful of each other's knowledge. But that's what we're doing in front of the people. We're doing a road show. And it's 10 o'clock at night, and it's like, hi. The guy's talking about, well, what about writing guns are sexy? And I moved my chair over. And John's like, Kevin, we've seen your room. Okay, fine. So, what we've done this year is expand the displays. Don't get used to it. This is the last expansion. 2.5 tons of display materials just to put the walls up. That's enough. We gotta store this crap. These sheets weigh 48 pounds each. But, God, does that look good? You know? And we encourage photography, which is fun because we see the people who come in right after the art show. Can we take pictures? God, we're gonna put this big sign, yes, you can take pictures. Except for the butthead who opened up the machine gun and showing his buddy how he handled it over in Afghanistan. Whoa. Slaps it down and hits it with his fist. 2 of us got on him and it was like, there's the door, don't come back. Because you ask, I mean, it's available, we'll try and answer what we can. you don't get to touch it because it rusts, except in this room where you'll bleed on it. And we have some of the best you'll bleed on it things made. The Japanese katana. It's a legendary weapon. It's just a weapon, okay? However, it is probably the most effective cutting sword that exists for a variety of reasons. One of them is the handle is proper so you can get a really good two-handed grip on it, but you can also handle it one-handed. There's no difficulty in doing this. All you need is a strong arm. The blade is what's called a flat V grind. It means it's flat on both sides, which results in a generally weaker edge, but it's sharp, very sharp, and it's sharp for its entire length. It is an art to sharpening a Japanese sword. Part of the art comes from the evolution of the blade. The evolution is determined by the availability of raw materials. Japan, the main islands, hell, the little islands, don't have coal. There's like one small coal mine on southern Kyushu, and it's like, really? They use charcoal. That's their primary fuel, portable fuel, especially in the old days. Who cares if you don't have coal? You can't melt iron. You got to melt it to make steel. So what they do instead is they use a very involved process. It's labor intensive. It takes like a week, and you end up with a billet of metal about the size of 2 bathtubs. Not the outside of the bathtub, the inside of the bathtub. And this is busted up. Okay, they build this thing out of clay. It's a furnace. They pump in air through the bottom. It's layers of charcoal and lime and other ingredients and iron sand. Japan also doesn't have iron ore. It's got iron sand. So they take all this stuff together, heat the snot out of it for days. I mean, there's guys just shoveling in charcoal and pumping the air until they cook it down, and they end up with this giant billet. And you can't take it out of the furnace. You take the furnace away from it, bust it up, build another one next time. Then they go to town. They break it apart with hammers. Steel is iron with a certain percentage of carbon dissolved in it, intimately mixed with the iron. There are limitations, strong limitations. The percentage can't be above 2%. If it's above 2%, it's pig iron. Pig iron is thermal resistance like you wouldn't believe. It does not care. You heat it up, you drop it in water, it goes, yeah, what? It can crack, but even that, it tends to be very shock resistant. Tool steel, the 0.8 to 1.2% carbon, that's steel. And what you can do with that, the great big deal about steel, you can heat it, quench it, and it hardens. Other materials you tend to have to work hard, which means you pound the snot out of them. And they don't stay hard. They also tend to be soft. The Bronze Age weapons, which those are original samples, tend to be a soft edge. But it's harder than the human hand, stronger for penetration, good deal of weight. So, I mean, this was what there was, and they did quite well with it. That axe head is 3,500 years old in the case, which is why it's in the case. Yeah, you want to lose your creds and get tossed out of here, open the case and handle the axe head. It's like, man, the cops will come and just, okay, they don't like you. We get a lot of allowances here because of the nature of what we do, and we have never abused it. We have had attendees try to abuse us, and it's like, oh, that ain't gonna work. So the Japanese take this big ass block of everything and break it up with hammers. There's a job. They're walloping on it, they're breaking into chunks, and the master swordsmith picks up the chunks and looks at them. He looks at how it broke. What do the crystals look like? What the hell is this? Is it steel? Is it high carbon steel? Is it low carbon steel? And he can tell by looking. There's a reason they call him the master bladesmith. And he gathers up like about a kilo and a half of this stuff. And they put it together on another billet, which is basically iron. And they stack it together, and they hammer it. After they have heated it to critical temperature. Critical temperature means it's not quite liquid, but it's non-magnetic, and it's a certain color, which is how they told what it was, because it didn't have a magnet. And when you hit it, the two surfaces of the metal become one. Okay? This is what people call Damascus metal. That's not why the Japanese were doing it. That's not why it has so many layers. They couldn't melt the steel. They couldn't get a consistent material together with characteristics they know until they made it all the same. So the hammering, folding, cutting, is to make a homogeneous carbon content throughout the piece of metal. Now they take that and they shape it. Problem with tool steel. You heat it, you cool, you quench it hard. Takes a wonderful edge. So does glass. And it'll break just as easily as glass. So you got to draw that. That's tempering, is drawing some of the heat out. Well, the Japanese don't temper the blades. They form them with other kinds of steel that won't harden as much. There's a reason he's called the master smith. And they'll sandwich the hard steel for the edge against mild steel for the sides, so that the counter, and soft steel, damn near iron, in the center to absorb shock. This rather wonderful set are miniature samurai blades, and this is how the original blade is formed. He's taken this metal, walloped the snot out of it, ended up with what he wants. Yes, there are millions of layers, but it's not for laminations. It's for consistency. They shape it with it looks like a ads sprinkle on it, and you have rough files. Now they coat it, and the coatings, it's like clay slip when you're making ceramics in school and you got that wonderful mud you get to play with. They coat it with a thin coating of that. Now, that's the whole blade. Okay, whole thing's coated. Now they put a thick coating of that crap on it, and there's actually birch in it. Some of the formulations on the back. So now you got a big, thick blob of this crap on the back, nice thin layer on the edge. And now they take a feather and they paint a pattern on it. That's what you see on the middle blade. And that's what these things are. They painted the stuff to make this pattern. That's some pretty complicated stuff. But it's straight. It's straight. It's straight. Heat it to critical temperature. You tell by the eye. You tell by the color. It's going to be quenched in water. The individual smith's secrets of everything were so tight that one visiting swordsmith looks at it and he's holding the tank, he's sticking his finger in the water. He gets his finger cut off. No one says word one. Guy just takes the sword, cuts his, okay, we're done.
Why would he cut his finger off?
He can't touch his own water and come up with the same temperature for quenching. Because he don't have a finger no more. They're hardcore bastards. So you've got this thing, it's heated to red. Well, it's beyond red. You take it, you hold it by the edge down. You got this with a pair of giant pliers tongs, and you stick it in the water, just like that. I've seen a film of it. Oh my God, is it neat? And what happens is the edge cools first, hardens. What happens when you harden something? It
Expands, contracts.
contracts, gets smaller. What does that do? Edge goes down. The point curves down.
Wow.
Like I said, they did a film of it, and it's like, I got a copy. It is like way cool. Edge goes down. Now the back end, remember, thicker coating, takes longer to cool. It's not going to be as hard as that front edge. It's also going to start to contract, and you get the curve. And you knock all this crap off, and you get this really ugly looking, way cool piece. Start polishing, finished blade. Polishing, you get to see the Hayman, the hard, what's called the temper line. Temper line is where it was thin. The wavy, the pattern is where you played with feather. Remember I was going to tell you the polishing was different? In, I'll say, European techniques, polishing tends to smear the crystals. So you get the nice mirror finish. You notice none of the Japanese blades have an actual mirror finish. It's kind of satiny, especially the way good one. That's because the Japanese use stones, water stones, to cut. Our sponsor Lansky has some marvelous sharpening stuff. What is your finest stone?
Finest, we have actually 2,000 grit.
2,000 grit.
Ceramic. Yep.
That's 1 inch square, has 2,000 holes in it. That's how fine it is. Japanese water stones, the finest one I personally have is 16,000, and I know there's finer. So when they polish laboriously by hand, they are not smearing the surface, they are cutting through the crystals, okay? And the finer you get, the brighter you see it. So when you finally look at a Japanese blade, and you're actually looking at the metal, you are looking into the metal. Master blades, well, it appears to have depth that you're looking at. There is a way you examine them. Don't do this. I'm going to do a little one, because I'm late in the day and I'm tired. Wakasashi. And that is, you look along the edge, put the light on it, trip up and kill myself, and you'll see everything. And there's a whole bunch of stuff as to everything you see in these things. I do not have the art. I'm a bumbling amateur at best to a master. And the fact that I will simply say that to a master is like, okay, they'll still talk to me. Now, why the pattern? Why do you work so damn hard to get a pattern on that Hayman? Because I don't care what stories you listen to. The swords break. They're steel. Go watch Shogun. Guy is really pissed at the hero, takes his blade, smashes it into a piece of bamboo, and snaps it off. Because he can't kill him. I can't kill him. The Shogun sitting out to him. Just tap. Okay. When you use a blade for combat, it's dull. You do not block the other blade with the edge. What happens when you hit two bottles together? You end up with little pieces of bottle. Well, the same thing will happen when you hit the glass hard edges together. So you block with the side and the back, okay? But you're still going to hit the edges together now and then. I mean, you can't not do it. So you get cracks. The crack won't break off the blade because it'll go along until it hits one of those loops and it stops. Form follows function. It's the perfect example of it. Everything about the blade came about because of necessity, and it's just evolved. This is not in any way to possibly draw away from the guys who do this. They are masters at it. They live a lifetime learning how to do it. They spend 2 years learning how to cut up a charcoal. Even that, it like all came together. Charcoal is better for hammer welding because it doesn't oxidize the surface of the material. The charcoal ash, and they throw rice straw on it, the ash acts as a flux. Well, the flux is there so that when you hit it, it comes out from between the metals and takes the oxidation with it. So you end up with a better weld. Japanese hammer welds are great. There's like one of the blades has a flaw in it, which is how you can tell the damn thing was hammer welded. You can finally find a flaw, which is basically the weld didn't quite make it, so it's a little gap. That's the katana. The katana is the length of the blade. Someone was asking me what would you use in an enclosed area. She was talking about a forest, houses count. For a pole arm, I like the Iklewa, which is the third one down. That is a Zulu spear. It is designed to get in there close and you stab the guy. It's not a throwing weapon, though you can throw it. Japanese Warrior Society, Bushido, if you will, had a gazillion rules. I mean, you could die by brushing against the guy. If the sheath of your samurai sword hit the sheath of another samurai sword, the samurais, somebody's not going to walk away. You can't take the big sword, the katana, in some places, but you could take the wakizashi, the little one. And the wakizashi is handier, very, very handy, for tight enclosed areas. This is my idea of like the ultimate close-in fighting weapon, CQB weapon. And yes, I prefer a gun. But this one, you're not going to hit it on the ceiling, and you're still going to be able to get a good blow. You're going to be able to block with it. You can stop a guy with a katana. So in this case, shorter is better, and they are allowed to take that into the presence of their host. This is the tanto, the dagger. So you're going to have the katana, wakizashi, it's lower, the katana is up, edge down, so you can draw and cut on the repulsed. I used to do Aido, art of the cut. You can take that off, leave it, you still have the wakizashi, which is lower, so you grab that. Or you can pull it and you got two, which really makes a bad day for whoever you're facing. And then the tanto's cross back. You draw that with whatever you want.
Which one of the wakizashi and the tanto is the one used for seppuku?
The tanto. Wakizashi is just too long. And there's a whole bunch of crap. There's a katana involved in it. But that's the second is standing there after you've done everything and you're basically dying. It's like, okay, you fulfilled honor, and he takes your head off. It's like you fulfilled honor, you don't have to sit there and rot. We're going to kill you. European blades, completely different, though, in style. Remember, we could cast steel. So we can form it, pound it, and all the rest. The cultures that couldn't do it as much, Norway. Anybody see a coal mine in Norway? Viking sword. Damascus steel, it's hammered. The center core, you take a good piece of Damascus and you can bend it into a loop and let go, and you get a straight piece of metal. It's a little bend, but incredibly strong, fibrous, like a piece of rope. You put a piece of hardened steel on the edge, just as good as a katana, only 2 edges. You can cut both ways. The old story about what would happen if a knight met a samurai is dumb. In my mind, samurai is going to die, knight's going to get screwed up. Why?
Armor.
Did you get the impression Tamahagani, which there's a small sample of real thing in that glass box, the steel they make this sword, does it sound hard to come by?
Yes.
Japanese armor isn't steel. Tends to be lacquered leather. Cutting weapon. Chopping weapon. You get a guy in plate, he's not going to have the flexibility, but he's only got to hit him once. And when he blocks, I don't care what side of the blade he blocks with, he's getting hit with an axe. I mean, it's chopping through. Strip him down, you got a guy in chainmail. Oh my God, is that thing heavy? You know, that's a different situation. You can not only cut, that'll resist cutting and some stabbing. I mean, the katana is a stabbing weapon too. It's just not done as much. But you certainly learn to stab with it. Or, I'm sorry, cut with a thrust. European, they tended to go with just hog into that guy. Roman short sword. And where the hell is my spatha? Spatha.
Yeah, it's a cavalry Roman sword. I suppose.
It's the evolution of the Roman sword. The gladius is shorter. Well, the spatha lets the guy on the horseback hit the guy who's down there on the ground.
Didn't it require
And
better
it-
metal?
Pardon?
Didn't it require better metal to get longer?
It's bigger.
Yeah.
More stress on the blade. Tends to be good steel. The Romans knew how to work steel. They knew how to temper. They basically invented it in Europe. It evolves into a more advanced one. And what the hell did that become?
Long sword.
The English longsword. They fought the Celts. And the Celts were impressed. And they picked up the sword and ran with it. So did the Vikings. Chopping sword is a little heavy. Mail is heavy. Plate armor is wow. There's our Roman Truby, Brucey babe. That is heavy, and you clank. It's also the first segmented, read that, flexible iron armor. Romans invented it.
There's a reason they conquered
So-
most of the world.
Pardon?
But there's a reason they conquered most of the world.
Yeah, they all fought the same way, and if you screwed with one, you met them all. And it's like, wow.
Well,
You
it's a
beat them in a forest, you know, that's how the Germans got, well, Germanics took them out as like they jumped them at them from trees. A little bit like what we did during the Revolutionary War.
Well, they had problems.
It doesn't work all the time.
Well, their usual thing, at least military history-wise, is they had their auxiliaries were always the archers and the cavalry. I mean, Rome's problem was they had the best heavy infantry in the world, and not necessarily much else.
Yeah, which means if you basically depend on your tanks for everything,
You can,
those pesky Air Force guys are going to eat your lunch. And then this poor infantry guy's going, I'm on the runway, you're going to die. So, plate armor, difficult to work with, difficult to hump around. The sword, really way cool. We're going to evolve gradually. The sword's going to get longer, it's going to get thinner, it's going to be more flexible. These are the swords from Lord of the Rings. No way in hell McClellan swung that damn sword. It's heavy. So they come up with the rapier,
yes.
which is really a long, slender, piercing blade, but it has cutting edge.
Yep.
And the left-handed dagger. The ring basically being intended to protect your hand from the other blade, the other guy's blade, pardon me, without excessive weight. These are what are called en suite, which means they're both the same, and it's a set. And I think it's really pretty in this mind, and I like it. And if you don't, keep it to yourself. That evolved into the short sword. Is that the other one?
Yep.
My legs hurt. The short sword, or small sword. We play farms. Currently, it's Saturday. The small sword is a more effective weapon than the greater broadswords. Why? Because it's faster. Speed is everything. Even in modern ballistics, speed is everything. So the small sword, you can move the thing around. And for those of you who really want to see a good fight, broadsword against small sword?
Rob Roy?
Yeah. At the end, and the only reason our hero lived is the guy with the small sword was an arrogant bastard. And, you know, grabbed the blade and chopped you in half. I used to fence. And the tall guy, you know, so I'm all the way at the end of the road, and then they had the left-handed, and for some reason all our left-handeds were women. And a woman's standing in front of me, she's like, I fight him. It's like fighting Rob Roy. And I'm standing there, I'm embarrassed because of target. I keep poking her in a boob with my knife, you know. I'm like, oh God, you know, can I get somebody else? Yeah. And then I had this little one, fucking Wolverine. All she knew how to do was attack. And she closes with me, and I'm basically, go away! Stab, stab, stab.
Gotta get inside your garden, you're little.
So, the small sword evolves into the last weapon sword, and that is the epee. This is the only one of the fencing swords that is a direct descendant of a weapon. The saber is called such because you cut with it. You don't have to hit them with a point. You cut them, and you can cut them on a repulse. I mean, this is considered sharp. The foil's how you learn everything. And I hope you've learned from us. Any questions? Thank you very much. Okay, fine.
Is the procedure you described about how the katana and wakizashi have a curved blade similar for scimitars?
Not really. The scimitar, a little more along the lines of a cutlass. It was formed that way. I feel the quenching probably accentuated it, but only because the back of the blade is thick. They don't use the coating system, which is how it worked on the Japanese blade. And a scimitar is a cutting weapon. A wonderful example, King Richard the Lionheart is in the Crusades. He's causing us unbelievable trouble these days now because he was in damn Crusades. And he meets Saladin. And it's a guy thing, compare weapons. And he's going, this is a broadsword. Ours is good. No, this isn't. He puts an iron mace down between two chairs and cuts through it with a single stroke. Saladin goes, that's a demonstration of strength, not a demonstration of cutting. What do you mean? Takes a silk handkerchief. This is silk. It's the only way you're supposed to show the naked blade. It's supposed to be sitting on silk. Throws it in the air, holds out the scimitar, falls against the edge in two pieces. That's cutting. There was someone else? Probably you.
Yes. What are the pros and cons of using water and oil for quenching?
Water does what they call a rapid quench. Oil does a slower quench.
Okay.
If you find modern tool steels, O1 steel, oil hardening. W1, water hardening. Which means it'll cool quickly and not shatter. Did you get the impression I have a respect for a Japanese master smith? They're a master because they only lose 75% of the blades they make. because you pull it out of the damn quench, it makes this screechy little funny noise, and you get pieces. And after you've worked it, and mine happened when I was polishing it, and I heard this little, and you look at the edge and it's all cracks. Saved it because I cut it, the end was still good, so I cut it, had this neat little hardness line, and I reversed it, had a Scramasax tip on it. And the guy was just like, how sharp is it? I don't know. Took a 2-inch nylon Hauser, hung it from his garage door. Hauser's really thick rope. And I said, this ain't gonna work. Thump. It's not supposed to work. Nylon's stretchy. You're not supposed to be able to cut it like that. You're supposed to do it with manila. And how much you want for the blade? I never left the house with the blade. Okay, sir.
How does the ancient steel compare to modern tool steel?
Modern tool steel is vastly superior. There are no inclusions. The material is pure and homogeneous throughout. Ancient steel, for example, when the Romans made their helms, they weren't able to spin the original one. Spinning is where you have a disc and of metal and the shape you want, and you rotate it real fast and you kind of like squish it in with a stick. They couldn't do it because the inclusions in the iron made it break apart.
Cool.
No.
Bad.
Yeah.
What's the basic difference between having the curved blade and the straight blade?
Curved blade, the straight blade is superior for the thrust. Curved blade is superior for the cut. The Japanese blade, it just kind of like works out that when you cut with one, you're constantly, the edge is in the same place as you curve past it. And it's you take a knife and push down on cheese, and you'll get through it eventually. Draw the knife, and you just slice right through it. So the curve makes it an efficient cutter. I'm starting to not like you.
I read somewhere that there was, in regards to Japanese blades, there was one thing to cut, but I remember you had to use something else if you were to parry, like to push aside.
Yeah. That's a sword technique.
What kind of small sword would you specialize in?
You wouldn't. You'd parry with the katana.
No, just the katana.
Sure.
No, it was a
A
common.
parry is knocking your blade out of the way. That's a parry.
Yeah.
Why didn't
Remember
they
how
use
there was
shields?
some cases where apparently people used a smaller blade to help with that?
The
Sure.
wakizashi.
That's the wakizashi, and you have it in your other hand.
It's cheaper to replace.
Well, not really.
Yeah.
But you can use it, hold the weapon away, and strike with the katana, which gives you greater reach. So it's more lethal.
Kitan root.
What?
I thought scimitars were used after the Crusades and not before.
It was a curved Damascus-style blade. This is very close to one. A true scimitar, that big wide-angle draw one, that was an executioner's sword. They were sort of cutting the heads off. This is a little closer to it. And this is watered steel, which is Damascus steel.
And that'd be around 1100s era.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those cavalry cultures developed it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.